How's it going, everyone? We're here to check out what's new in this month's Rust update. So, we've got quite a few changes and so forth, but not a whole lot of content, and that's because I think a lot of the stuff is bigger things being worked on in the background. And also, the devs have acknowledged, and they hear our cries, there's a lot of stuff that just needs balancing out and so forth. So that seems like they're going to be tackling a lot of quality of life and balancing stuff over the next coming couple of updates or so forth, and they are always working on the cheater problem in the background. They also talked about that, saying how they don't want to share how they're doing it, but to let you know they are working on it. So that's kind of the thing to keep in mind there. So, moving on, as you can see, we're in the new Brutalist skin, which is pretty nice, and we'll get to that here in a second, but we're going to cover a few other things. We've got some weapon changes. The homing launcher finally has its aim down sights. And as you'll see, it's actually like a screen. So you do have that kind of black and white kind of downside to it, but it also lets you kind of know when you're armed. It kind of gives a blink, 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 and you get the, beeping effect. And you can also kind of see and judge your distance a little bit better with this. So, hey, you can still kind of free fire by just hooking on to whatever it may be, but you also now have the aim down sights option. Now, the Mp5 has also seen some changes. A lot of people feel like it hasn't really lived up to the fact that it's supposed to be a tier 3 gun. And it's always been in a weird spot. It came out when it was skinnable, but tier 3 guns weren't craftable in any kind of way. So it got made, or switched over, I should say, to being a craftable gun so that people could put skins on it. And then later on there was a fix to where you could skin anything, whether it's craftable or not, and it just never got switched back to being a crafted gun. Now, I don't know if they'll ever put it back to not being crafted or if it will always stay craftable, but one way or another the Mp5 has felt kind of weak, and they've done some buffs to it. It actually has more damage and a little more accuracy, which I think is something a lot of people have been asking for. And, as they've said here in the dev blog, they're not meant for long-range engagements, but they do see that there was some weird kind of issues with it, so they did reduce the aim cone on the SMGs. I believe that means all three of them, so that's not just the MP5, but that is also going to be the custom and the Thompson. And then for the MP5 specifically, it got a bit of a buff to deal more damage, like I said, and have a little bit less bullet drop. So this is, kind of a nice little change. And then in addition to that, the burst mode has also been improved to where it's going to give you higher accuracy, less recoil. I can't talk today. So yeah, those are some gun changes. Probably not the revert recoil people are asking for, but hey, maybe something in the positive direction. So with that said, we do have quite a bit of other things. You might notice that the water jugs have turned yellow, and that's because Charitable Rust is back, and this year, they're working with charity water. So, in conjunction with that, to celebrate, along with some Twitch drops next week, you'll see there's yellow jugs this month. So if you're wondering what's up with that, now you know. So, the Brutalist skin, we'll go ahead and kind of fly around and take a look at it. As you can see, it's gotten quite a bit of improvements and changes from the past. Has all these water stains and wear and tear. There's even some like moss and rust and stuff going on in there. Look over here, you can see kind of that green kind of starting to go. You're like, I'm not sure if that's a shit stain or some moss growing. It's one of those kind of things, right? And yeah, as we take a look up here on the roof, you can see same thing going on quite a bit. We'll kind of just cruise along on the inside. It's updated, a lot more definition to it, I would say. It gives it much more of a kind of abandoned bunker feel from the kind of too clean look it had before, which I think is nice. But there we have that. So we'll go ahead and cruise back in here and show you a few other of the new little stuff, quality of life kind of things they've given us. First one's going to be, you now have proper storage to put one of each type of tool into the TC, and it won't hide your upkeep. It's now a separate little panel, and you've got space for all the tools. Again, it's just a small thing, but it's a really nice thing. You know what I mean? Then also with vending machines, you can now toggle off your vending machines from the map. This will toggle off all of your vending machines at once if you find the need to do that. Then moving along, we also have a bit of an increase to the workbench radius. You now pretty much have a almost full square kind of all around it. A little bit less on the sides, I feel. About half that way. Almost a full square. A little more than half this way. So, I mean, you have some more wiggle room for it. Definitely gives people the ability to kind of stuff the cabinet, workbench, or, you know, maybe, I don't know, put something in front of it. You don't need to exactly have it right there in front of you once you've done your research and so forth, which is nice for some space management things. Alright, moving along, we have some changes to the small battery. It now also gives off a higher capacity and more power. So that is a nice little addition. Maybe people will go to electricity a little bit earlier, or hey, maybe this will just help you, you know, do stuff a little more sooner. Who knows? Definitely always nice to see adjustments going in the positive direction at least. So along with this, we also have some changes to tugboats. If you're trying to kind of cheese it and spawn directly underneath, you know, oil rig or another monument with using your tugboat, it won't work. You're going to actually have to be parked further away. And yeah, if you're too close to the actual monument up in there, it will not let you spawn on your bag. So keep that in mind, as that is going to be something that changes up strategy quite a bit. And as I said, there are a few new menu options that are around. So the first one's going to be in your server browser. It's going to be the use cache. And basically this will make sure that it loads your favorites first. That way, if you want to jump straight into the server that you know you're going to, you can. And that's just simple, nice little option, little check mark. Then if we go into options, you can go ahead and check out a few other things. The first thing's going to be under control. You have now a option to set specific dismount speeds for each type of vehicle. So, you know, cars and helicopters, boats, and horse. And you can set how long you want it to take for you to hold down, you know, the actual button before you dismount. So that's a nice little thing right there, especially if you're kind of a clumsy person like me. That might be a nice little thing to, you know, play around with. And you can set it differently for each one that you want and adjust as you go. Then if we go back under to graphics, you'll notice the global rendering is here again. Right now that it is pretty much kind of a experimental thing, so you want to play around with that. But you can set anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500, and you can go ahead and try to see how it works for you and adjust it from there. So it isn't officially put in 100% feature, but it's there for testing. So if that makes sense to you guys. And moving on to something else. What's that sound again? Well, weather has been kind of scarce because frames and so forth and other problems, and it wasn't quite performing, I think, as the devs wanted it to, and some servers just straight up had it disabled entirely. But that's right, weather is back, and it should happen more often and be kind of just giving that vibe around the game again. So yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see how this affects everyone's gameplay and so forth, but we should have fog and weather and so forth much more often in game once again. So it does look like they have optimized it, and of course they're always looking for feedback on that and how it's going. Another thing, if we go ahead and clear up our weather here. Alright, now that we're far enough out to where the water isn't like a foot deep, they have improved underwater kind of visibility. It's a little bit brighter, and you should be able to navigate much nicer with some goggles. Now, without them, still pretty hazy, but I would say there's actually at least some light to it. I feel like before it was almost pitch black, so I think this is a nice improvement for sure. Alright, so we're almost to the very last part and probably the most controversial of the entire update, which would be the turret nerf or changes, however you want to look at it. But before we get there, there's a few exciting things that are coming up that I want to go ahead and mention to you. As I did preview the Frontier skin to you guys earlier on, it does look like the Frontier skin may have a matching door that goes along with this base Decor DLC that's coming out. So there's going to be a new DLC, and it's basically role player DLC, and it's going to let us decorate up our bases with some semi-functional objects. And looks like one of the first ones is going to be Frontier doors that are a bar door. So I'm thinking it's going to be kind of like a Western bar door, you know, the door opens, you know, in the middle kind of thing. I don't know if it will be open and visible through the top and bottom. We'll just have to see. There's no visuals on it yet. All we have is this commit node, but that's definitely something that's kind of exciting. Alongside with that, we also see something for a minecart planter that looks like it should have 2 seed slots for you to plant inside and use as decoration. And then with that, we also have a one or single weapon rack of some sort that's going to be in there. So just a way to literally just display a weapon. You know, it's not going to be something as functional like the weapon racks. It's literally just a single weapon for display and decoration, so to say. Then, in addition to that, there's also the trophies, and it looks like there's multiple hunting trophies. Something called the Player Skeleton Hunting Trophy Small. I don't know how you can have a small skeleton. I'm not sure what that'll be, but it looks like a chicken head. I've also seen things for deer head and other things like that. So it does look like we'll actually finally be able to see some trophies popping up in the game, and you can place them around your base for decoration. Now, I don't know what else might be in this, and like I said, there's not a whole lot on visuals, but that's definitely a fun little thing for everyone that wants some role-playery stuff. Then, of course, we do have Halloween coming up, so of course there are some cool things. Last week we talked about the Dracula cape being something that was probably going to be a player item you can grab in the shop. It looks like they'll be re-enabling scarecrows this year. There's something called the Bone Collectible, so hey, that'll be attached to something somehow. Looks like the Frankenstein table is coming back, and Halloween portals once again. So that's where these portals pop up around the world, and you can go into a kind of private dungeon and fight off NPCs for some loot. So it definitely looks like a fun thing. And in addition to the Dracula cape and so forth, looks like there is also going to be a vampire stake skin. I don't know if this is going to be like a bone knife skin or what it may be, but hey, it's going right in sync with the whole Dracula cape. So now we've got something to counter Dracula. One way or another, those are definitely some fun little things that are, you know, worth looking forward to coming up. But let's go ahead and jump into the heart of it with the turret changes. All right, guys, so turret changes. There can only be 12 active turrets in a 40-meter radius at once. So you can put down more than 12 turrets, but not within 40 meters of each other. So what exactly does that mean? Okay, so to give, and this can be changed a bunch of different ways, which we'll cover here in a minute, but just to give a general idea, as you can see, we have 13 turrets here. One is off, okay? So let's just say these are 12 turrets in a, you know, 3x3x3 base kind of area. So where is then the next closest turret we could place? It's going to be all the way down here. That is about, it says 40-meter radius, so I noticed that if I put a turret here, go ahead and do that, this one will turn off. See? But if we get rid of this one, it does not affect over there. So there you go. 14 foundations. If you want something connected, that's kind of how it's going to go. Of course, I did split this off and put a separate TC on it, and it was still 14 foundations. It didn't make a difference whether it was 1 TC or 2 TCs. So this could be a completely separate building in your compound, so to say. But that's kind of the distance there. So, well, how does it work? Well, you could have it set up to say, well, alright, what if I turn this turret off? Then we could divert the power to somewhere else, right? So, alright, this is our 13th turret. It's not going to work, right? But if we kill power, say, through the smart switch from this turret, now that turret works. But if we power this one back up again, then that one's going to go back down again. See, it kind of toggles them. So you can see now this one's the one that's stuck. You'd have to turn that off first. And there you go. So, you know, you can mess around with this. You could have, again, you could do heartbeat sensors. And the heartbeat sensors could go ahead and open a door and activate a turret. And when that turret activates, you know, one somewhere else will deactivate. Now, the first question everyone's going to ask is, well, what if I set this all up all fancy to where I want this one to turn off when this one turns on? Does the server remember that? And from initial testing, from what I've heard, it seems that the server does effectively remember how you set that up. So if you specifically, you know, want a certain turret to turn off while a certain other one turns on, that is something you can do if you have the electrical know-how. So, I mean, you can still play around with it. You could have easily 30, 40 turrets in your base, but only 12 can be running at a time. So, I mean, this definitely makes people put a lot more work into electrical, a lot more thought into it, but it does definitely limit those, like, million turret bases, which were definitely a problem. But I don't know about you guys, this is probably the most controversial update for me personally, myself, because I'm usually the kind of person that has a group of maybe 2 to 4 people, so we're going duo, quad, and everyone has a job or kids or both, and we can't be on 24/7. I have the most time of anybody, and that's because, you know, I work from home. And I mean, it's one of those things where you don't really have any way to protect of offlining, and most of the times we play on, you know, duo quad servers, and the only thing that would prevent us from being offline would be the fact that we had 100 something turrets, and by the time we all logged in to defend, because we got our raid notification on our phone, they're, you know, finally at the base taking out the last 5 turrets of those, like, let's be realistic, 50 turrets or so. So, I mean, 50 turrets sounds ridiculous, but at the same time, it's kind of like, they're very easy to blow through. I mean, some HVs or some grenades and, you know, some know-how with raiding, and turrets are not really a huge problem. So, but when there's, like, literally hundreds on a base, that's a problem. So I kind of wish maybe instead of going directly from unlimited to 12, they could have maybe left a little more of a gap there, maybe double even, and just seen, but at least we know with these devs, they're always open to changing it and adjusting it. If everyone hates it, they'll hear us. And, you know, there's some things that they'll, you know, stay put with, but this is something they said that they're very much so actively watching and want to hear our feedback on. So make sure, guys, you give that actual constructive feedback on this so that it's something they can use and that it makes a difference. So that's pretty much it, everyone. Sound off down in the comment section below. How do you feel about all of this? Thanks for watching, and stay rusty.